This is Lions Uncaged on talkSPORT 2. I'm your host, Alfie Reynolds. I've just landed in Sydney following one of the most incredible Lions matches in recent memory. I was privileged to be pitchside as the Lions clinched the series and beat the Wallabies in the dying embers at the MCG in front of 90,000 people. Truly historic. Alongside me once again for another show is none other than the former London Irish and England winger, Topsy Ojo. Topsy, so much to get into, but what an unbelievable match we saw on Saturday.
Man, it was absolutely incredible. I enjoyed every moment sat watching it in front of the TV screen, but I've got to come back to you and say, what was it like being in the stadium for that moment? Where were you actually when Hugo Keenan scored? Because to be part of that on the ground must have been incredible.
Yeah, do you know what? It was one of those moments that is a real pinch yourself. I had goosebumps being pitch side in the build up as it was getting ready for the game. And yeah, the word I used in the intro there, privileged. Like, I felt so privileged to be there and to witness it. And an incredible moment when Hugo Keenan crossed. So I was basically, if you had the Australia replacements on one side, the Lions replacements on the other, and then the kind of officials, the doctors, some of the referees and things in the middle patch there, bang on halfway. That's where I was. So that's where I was watching it and saw, when I looked to my left-hand side, scenes of utter jubilation from the Lions, and then the Wallabies to my right-hand side, complete despair, real contrast. But yeah, it was an incredible night. So we're going to get into all of that. Look, loads to get into on the show. Over the next hour, we'll break down the game yesterday. We'll hear from the match winner, Hugo Keenan. I spoke to him just minutes after he touched down to win the game and the series for the Lions. We'll also look at the Wallabies and why yesterday, despite that result, could be so important for Australian rugby. And we'll also look ahead to next weekend's third test. So much still on the line. The Lions are looking to become the first team since 1927 to clean sweep a Southern Hemisphere side. All of that and so much more coming up right here on Lions Uncaged. So the Lions beat the Wallabies 29 points to 26, and there were just 40 seconds to go when Jamison Gibson-Park slung the ball to Hugo Keenan and he managed to evade Len Ikitau and finish in the corner. Before we get properly stuck in, Topsy, what was your immediate reaction to the game? Were you jumping up and down on your sofa? Were you breathing a sigh of relief? Where did your emotions take you?
To be honest, I couldn't believe what I was watching, that it was going to come down to a last play and you thought, right, are the Lions going to get over the line, or are Australia going to hold out and give us this third test decider? I think joy and actually pride. Joy in terms of how the game was won, and then pride in terms of what the game did for the sport overall. Like I say, both teams going toe to toe, both teams playing their part, kind of displaying everything that you want to see from a great game of rugby union, from an international test match. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt at the end. Obviously, over the moon for the Lions. I felt so much for Australia. Everything that we've spoken about in the build-up, they gave us, but they just couldn't get over the line at the depth. So it's heartbreak. I've been on both sides of that, winning it at the death, losing it at the death. And yeah, it's tough, but just what a game. What an epic game of rugby.
Yeah, epic is absolutely the right word. We'll get on to the Wallabies, who, as I say, your heart went out to them. The kind of look of devastation on their faces was brutal at the full-time whistle. But just minutes after that full-time whistle, I caught up with the match winner, Hugo Keenan pitchside, who couldn't quite believe what he'd managed to do.
I'm with the man that scored the winning try. Hugo, many congratulations. You have just scored the try that has won this series for the Lions. Try and sum it up for me.
Yeah, it's a bit surreal. Like to hear this crowd in this stadium, for it to go down to the wire, for us to not get the performance we wanted, but to show the character to come back, to play that many phases, the last couple of minutes to hold on to the ball, and I suppose trust ourselves is unbelievable. It's been an unbelievable group, unbelievable set of players, coaches, backroom staff, and yeah, we're absolutely chuffed that we can do it for not only the 23 today, but the wider squad, the management, everyone, and 50,000 Lions supporters and everyone back home. It's unbelievably special.
You knew the Wallabies would throw everything at you. They did that. How did you turn that game around?
Yeah, they absolutely did. They came out firing. We had a bit of a purple patch they capitalised on, or they did, and they capitalised on our yellow card, and that's the quality of side they are. But we never gave up. We dug deep, and yeah, credit to the lads.
Just finally, very quickly, what an occasion this was at the MCG.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable stadium. It's so cool. Walking out is, I think it's probably my favourite stadium in the world after this. Yeah.
Congrats, mate. Enjoy it.
Cheers.
Brilliant to speak to Hugo Keenan so soon after the full-time whistle. And I think you can hear it there, can't you? That the adrenaline is still pumping for him. It was all pretty chaotic. The players and all the support staff were all around. He was getting tapped on the back. He was being hoisted onto shoulders at one point to be hauled off the pitch. I mean, those are the moments, aren't they? You'll know this as a former player. It is those moments that are the ones that live longest in the memory.
Absolutely. It's dreamland stuff. It really is, and you can have ideas in your mind as to how these situations would play out, but to score the match-winning try to win the series for the Lions is, yeah, I'll say it's stuff of legends. It puts himself in a list because he's had that moment. And yes, of course, the team played their part, but he was the one that scored the try. So being lifted on the shoulders of all the other boys, being given a lap of honor, he's an absolute legend already in that one moment. And then I'm glad he was able to take it all in as well because of the timing that it happened. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity to do that. But yeah, in an iconic stadium with all the Lion supporters, all the boys all over him, incredible stuff. And actually, I'm glad afterwards as well. I'm sure you've seen it, the picture of the players just on the pitch when it was empty, really taking it all in again, just saying wow, we did something here. And I'm not surprised he said that's now his favourite stadium because, of course, you've just cemented yourself in kind of Lions folklore. So, yeah, I mean, fair play to Hugo Keenan because actually he's had a tough tour if you think about the start of the tour. So what a way to finish it. I mean, again, what a story. Just adds to everything we've seen over this Lions tour so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The players took a load of plastic chairs out to the pitch after all the crowds had left and were enjoying a few beers. The celebrations were well and truly underway by that stage. But the picture actually I've been sent the most, Topsy, is from the Sky Sports coverage, end of the game. And I somehow managed to get myself in shot as I was just about to chat to Hugo Keenan. I've been sent that a few times.
Hey, like any good reporter, you're right in the mix. And you probably got the first interview before anyone else, the one that everybody wanted with the match winner. So fair play, mate. You get yourself on TV. You deserve it.
Yeah, there were a few people that were messaging me back and was like, oh, yeah, that's me. There we go. At least the bosses know I'm doing my job, getting right in amongst it there. But you know what, Topsy? I felt like I was so pleased for last night because not just because the Lions won, but almost the bigger picture here. And we've spoken about this throughout the last few weeks of it's been a tour that the tour games haven't quite caught a light, haven't been that competitive. The first test had a great start, a great build up, but again, the Wallabies were a little bit off it. And I just feel like Lions series live off moments. They live off iconic moments that live through the decades and the years and the history, whether it's Gus Scott's drop goal in 97 or even a bad memory for the Lions on Justin Harrison winning the line out in 01 and George North in 2013, the last time we were in Australia. There's so many. And this Lions tour hadn't had one yet, but we got it yesterday. And we got it in terms of the ending with the Hugo Keenan try and winning it at the death that I think will go down in history. And we got it in terms of the occasion as well. 90,000 plus at the MCG. Hugo Keenan says it's now probably his favourite stadium. It was one of my favourite stadiums before last night. And I think it's definitely my favourite stadium now. It is just dripping in history. And we got another slice of it last night. But I felt, Topsy, that was actually really important for the Lions and for this tour.
Yeah, it was huge, and it actually can't be underestimated how important yesterday was because you said it there, when you speak about Lions, it's the memories. Where were you where you saw Jerry Guscott drop a goal or George North score or Jason Robinson score? So we now have that moment from this tour, and it's the moment that will be talked about. Yes, Hugo Keenan's try, but actually the game in itself in terms of it was a real test match. It felt like a top Southern Hemisphere team taking on the best of the Northern Hemisphere, going toe-to-toe, and the match had to be decided in the 79th minute, which is everything you want from a neutral sporting perspective. It wasn't one-sided. It was full-blooded. It was competitive. There were scraps, there were fights, there were amazing tries, and then there was drama. Drama that everybody, from whether you play the game to whether you don't play the game, maybe that's the biggest thing as well. When Lion series come around, it does bring in more casual fans, and actually they'll say, okay, I've heard people talk about this game. I will watch it. And they come away saying, all right, that was something. Now I start to understand it. And it's something that everybody can talk about for the next 4 years until the next test series rolls around. So yeah, that's what I mean when we were talking about it earlier. Just epic. So proud of what the players, everybody involved in yesterday brought to the table.
Yeah, and in the moments where I'd take off my headphones and just listen to the noise, like when Tom Wright scored that try, it was absolutely deafening. It was really really quite something. It was really very, very special. I think we were lucky to witness it. You mentioned some of the drama though, Topsy. We've got to talk about it. The controversy at the end. The Australian commentator Morgan Turanui called the officials weak in his commentary yesterday around the decision for Jack Morgan. So this is the clear out right at the end of the game, just a phase before the Lions scored the winning try. Jack Morgan clearing out Carlo Tizzano. Andrea Piardi and the referees said that they both got there at the same time. They didn't see enough head contact to award a penalty. Australia are absolutely furious with this. The Lions absolutely backing the officials and think there's nothing to see here. What did you make of it on first viewing when you saw that replay? Were you thinking, oh, I think that's all right? Or were you thinking the Lions might be in trouble here?
On first viewing, I thought it was all right. It's the type of clear out that you actually see a lot in the games. A jackler gets there first and they're actually so low that the only way you can clear them out is to kind of hit them where they've exposed themselves. Yes, when you dive down into the laws, the jackler's not meant to have his head below his hips, which is kind of near impossible when you're trying to steal the ball. And of course, as a cleaner, you're not meant to hit the neck or the head area. But if those are literally the only areas exposed, when everything is so low, what are you meant to do from both sides? So obviously, when Tizzano gets up holding his head, I saw that straight away and I thought, oh, right, please, what's going to happen here? But I side with the referee in terms of I think it's an incident that happens a lot that doesn't get penalised. Are you then going to go and penalise it when the stakes are at their highest? You can't. You absolutely can't, because otherwise every other breakdown is going to be a penalty. So yeah, I thought it was a fairly legal clean out. I'm sure there'll be some more fallout through the week, but yeah, I'm sure there would have been some nervous moments, particularly for Jack Morgan, obviously, who was desperate to get involved. It was a huge moment. Again, we look at the try, but if he doesn't make that clear out, the Lions don't score. So he played his part in that test as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's a classic example of a decision that could genuinely go either way, and the way in which it split people. And you've got some people saying it was a disgrace and it hit him on the head and it should have been a penalty. And then you've got others who are saying it's absolutely perfect clean out technique from Jack Morgan. And I think it's this decision that rugby, the type of decision that rugby sometimes throws up, particularly in the breakdown area, because there's so many moving parts, that you could honestly see it given in either way. And so I almost don't have too much of a problem either way. And I think the fact that the refs backed their original decision, I'm kind of okay with that. Had they turned around and awarded a penalty, I also wouldn't have been outraged by it either, which I know doesn't quite make sense, because you're probably thinking, well, which is it? But sometimes you do get these ones that are a pretty grey area. You can see it either way. I don't have a huge issue with it. One thing that I just want to ask you about, though, Topsy, is the reaction of Tizzano that I know some people have pointed towards. And this is a really tricky one, because I've got no doubt when you're getting absolutely walloped by Jack Morgan that it's going to hurt, right? I'm not saying that he wasn't in any sort of pain. But are we starting to see more and more players give a reaction to try and force the officials to look at things? I don't think he's the first. I think we've seen it plenty of times before. But does that concern you, that players are reacting in a way that is deliberately drawing attention to moments in the hope that they earn a penalty for their team?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you know the game's on the line, everything's at stake, sometimes you react in a certain way. And I say that is starting to creep in. We've seen a couple of incidents with it over the last couple of years, because now that because there's so many TV cameras and the referees, we are looking to protect the players. So looking to kind of negate any kind of head contact. that actually, if you can demonstrate that to the officials, to the TV cameras, they're going to pick up on it and say, "Oh, hang on, why is he holding his head? He must have been hit in the head." So I'm hoping that it's something that the game will stamp out very quickly because yes, we're trying to protect the players, but you don't want them to be remonstrating to the referee every 5 minutes. He's hit me in the head. He's hit me in the head. Like we don't want it to go down that road. So yeah, I'd like to think the game will self-police itself, and hopefully it doesn't become a thing where now we're accusing players of diving because you're then trying to abuse a system that's been put in place to protect you. So let's hopefully not go down that road.
Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily go as far to say that he dived. I don't think he did that, but I did think he maybe exaggerated his reaction in a way to try and draw attention to it. And I think we are seeing that more. And I think that is something that the game needs to really keep an eye on. Very quickly before we break, let's just hear from the Lions head coach, Andy Farrell, who I caught up with following the match.
You see what it means to everyone in there. You can hear them, can't you? These lads have dreamed of being a British and Irish Lion all their lives. And to get to the point where we come to the MCG, 90-odd thousand people, with a dramatic finish like that to win the series is what dreams are made of, and no one can deny that for us now. It's a special moment for everyone. So we are absolutely delighted that we showed the courage of what it takes to be a Lion, and delighted for everyone involved.
So good to speak to Andy Farrell after the game. Topsy, just before we head to break, it's a really special moment for him. Not many Lions coaches are winning Lions coaches, and he's wrapped this series up, him and his team, with a game to spare. Really special moment for him.
Hugely special. And again, writes his name in the history books, as someone that has coached on 2 tours and been successful on 2 tours. I loved the camera cutouts to the box where you see a coach emotionally involved, and you can't not be, of course. Some coaches do very well to keep their powder dry, but the celebrations at the end, like I love to see that being let out, be all out in its fullest. And yeah, credit to Andy Farrell because yes, there's been criticism of selections and justifiably so. When you're thinking about trying to get selected for a team, does form come ahead of what they've done previously? And I think self-admittedly he'd say I picked my big game players not based on maybe what they've done in this tour, but what I know they can do. And by and large, they delivered. And that's a gut call that only Andy Farrell can make. Us on the outside, we can look at stats and details and video footage and everything, but he spends day in, day out with these players, as he has done over years. So it's on his head. And on his head, the Lions are 2-0 up in the Test series. And that's all anybody will remember. So credit to Andy Farrell and the rest of the coaching team as well, because yes, the buck stops with him, but he hasn't done it on his own.
Topsy, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but what did you make of the Lions' performance overall, in particular in that first half? Because I thought the Wallabies really had them on the ropes.
Well, it felt a bit like the roles were reversed from Test 1 to Test 2. I mean, Australia really brought it, everything they needed to do. So from a physical point of view, they were much better. Accuracy was much better. And just their all-around intensity, both in attack and defence. So they put the Lions under more pressure than they did last weekend, which forced the Lions to make mistakes, which forced the Lions to give away penalties. So before you know it, Australia are on the scoreboard early. The crowd are into the game. And on that physical point of view, Will Skelton, Valentini coming to the fore, giving Australia a platform to play off, meant that they could play some brilliant rugby. They could score some great tries. They could get into the tight and get stuck into the Lions. They could go from 50, 60 metres and bring Sueli and Ikitau into the game more. I mean, Tom Wright had a fantastic game, brilliant game. So actually, we got to see the quality that Australia do possess, as long as physically they can get themselves into the game. Now, of course, as the game wore on, and particularly as those 2 boys went off the pitch, Valentini and Skelton, you then saw maybe the issue that Australia have in terms of when everybody's fit, they have the power and the quality to go toe-to-toe, but you remove some key elements from that team, as happens to a lot of teams, but particularly with Australia right now, you take those pieces off the board, and the Lions took full advantage, and you could actually visibly see that in the second half. Their belief grew. It did just before half-time. Sorry, I have to go back to that point. That was key. Those 2 scores before half-time, absolutely key in changing the tone of half-time, refueling the Lions' belief and saying, we can still win this game.
I want to go back to a point you mentioned just a second ago. The 2 tries the Lions scored before half-time. I totally agree with you. Crucial in terms of the momentum of the game. Crucial in terms of the Lions getting themselves back within touching distance so that they went in at half-time not trailing by a massive, massive margin. And in particular, how about that Dan Sheehan finish?
Superman.
Yeah.
Superman. He's been watching the film that just came out. Again, another moment where some people would say, look, is he allowed to jump into contact? Is he allowed to so you're allowed to dive in the act of scoring. And funnily enough, that moment had been replayed previously because they had a tap penalty. He went low and he got stopped dead in his tracks. So again, one you could look at and say, should that have been allowed? I thought it was fine because again, he's diving to score. He's not diving. I mean, yes, he is diving to avoid the tacklers, but he's diving to score. So almost those two negate each other. It was a clever finish. And, that was the only bright spark in kind of that opening half an hour until the Lions got within touching distance. And actually just touch on like a couple of key things in that. There was another huge Tom Curry Tyke Byrne moment that set up the penalty for Finn Russell to have a crack. And actually, that's one of those moments where some tens might say, you know what, I can't miss touch, so I'm going to take off 10 meters. That actually makes a difference. I don't think Hugh Jones might have scored, but the odds of him scoring go up massively because that line out is 5 meters out. So the ability to execute some key skills under the highest pressure is huge. And that was actually a big difference maker in allowing the Lions to get themselves back into that game before half time.
Yeah, I also think there are a number of moments that you can look at, but the one where Tom Curry made the tackle on Suolihi as the Wallabies had broken through, things like that, isn't it? That you just felt the momentum was starting to shift. Do you feel that in a game as a player? Do you think the Lions in those moments, particularly because they'd been so on the back foot, their discipline hadn't been good? We'd seen Tommy Freeman in the sin bin. They were really up against it. But do you think those sorts of moments as players, they probably started to feel the momentum shift back within their favour?
They're key. They're so key because, the games will always ebb and flow. Australia had a huge opening half an hour, but the Lions were probably saying to themselves, right, we will get our opportunity. And actually what they did show is when they got those opportunities, they were pretty ruthless. They got into the 22, they came away with a point. So, but to do that just before half time, you go into the game, into the halftime talk, even though you're down, with your chests up, with energy, with belief, saying, right, we're now back into it. We know what we need to do. For Australia, they're like, yeah, we've played brilliantly, the best rugby we've played for ages, and yet we're not that far ahead on the scoreboard. So you still have a bit of belief, but it's been chipped away because of what the Lions have done.
Well, I also spoke to the Lions captain Maro Itoje in the press conference following the match, and I asked him how special it is to lead a Lions team to a series victory.
It means the world, but I'm just delighted for everyone involved. It's been a massive squad effort. There's been, all the players who's come in, who've now left, the guys who got injured at the start, who added to what we're doing, all the backroom staff. This has always been the goal, to get for the results to be this way, this point in the tour. And we're just delighted. This is what dreams are made of.
Maro Itoje speaking there. Topsy, I don't know if it came across fully in the clips we just heard, but to take you into the bowels of the MCG where the press conference was, it was literally next door. It was one door into the Lions dressing room. So as Andy Farrell and Maro Itoje were speaking, you could just hear these songs blaring out and bleeding in. And Maro actually said at one point, he just said, you see what you guys are making me miss here? Because he was wanting to be involved in the celebrations. But the flip side of that, and we will come on to the Wallabies slightly later in the show, but when Joe Schmidt and Harry Wilson were in there, we just had like Robbie Williams' Angels blaring out through the door whilst these guys were having to chat to the media after losing a test series, a Lions test series. So yeah, it was a pretty unique environment for a press conference. Let me say that. What have you made of Maro Itoje though, Topsy? I mean, a guy that I think has led by example on this tour. Another really good performance for him in that second test.
I think he's been brilliant. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of Maro anyway, but he's kind of a player that, he plays the game right on the edge. And actually in the opening kind of quarter to half an hour where the Lions struggled, he gave away a couple of penalties, but he just keeps going. He's got an unbelievable engine and also a player that in the big moment comes up with big players. A couple of turnovers, a couple of key tackles. And I think he led very well. Also, his mannerism helps him with referees because he's able to go and have kind of calmer conversations. And he was into it because Will Skelton was getting stuck into him in the first half, and there was kind of chirping away from both sides. So when all that niggle is going on, you do need a captain that's able to kind of just build a rapport with the referees. And he was able to do that as well as performing to a really high level. So, look, and again, with the way Mara is, he's very reserved, very softly spoken, but he's done something special as well. Done something that not very men have done, which is captain the Lions to a winning series. So he's added his name to a pretty exclusive list. And again, the magnitude of that, he'll play down, but it's going to be felt by so many others who've been watching this series.
And then it's hard to know, which players to highlight and pick out here, Topsy, because we've seen so many good performances from players in Lions jerseys over the last few weeks, and it was the same again at the MCG. But I think we have to mention the halfbacks. Jamison, Gibson Park and Finn Russell have just oozed quality and class, I think, throughout this tour. And I actually think if you look at both teams, yes, we know that man for man, the Lions are stronger. That's why they're the favourites for the series. But as we saw with Will Skelton and Rob Valentini coming in, the Wallabies have some absolutely brilliant forwards in their forward pack, just like the Lions. They've got some incredibly athletic and talented backs like Tom Wright and Sualihi, like the Lions do. But I think almost that the biggest disparity between these two teams was in the halfbacks, which is no knock on Tom Liner. He's a young 10. I'm really excited to see where his career can go. But I think in Jamison, Gibson Park and Finn Russell, the Lions had two world-class halfbacks, and they were both brilliant again in this game.
Yeah, they were the difference maker. And I guess the biggest compliment I can pay to both of them, but particularly Finn Russell in this series, is that when we speak about their games and how well they've played, it's actually nothing magical, if you know what I mean. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there were some nice touches from Finn Russell, but it was nothing magical. It wasn't anything X factor. It was just the consistency and the quality of their scanning, their decision making, their passing, their kicking. I mean, Finn Russell missed a couple of kicks yesterday, but the big ones to the corner he nailed. Some tactical ones he nailed. That kickoff early on, just to turn Australia and put them to a 5 meter line out. So little things like that just allowed the team to function in and around them. And actually, that's probably the highest praise you can give them, in that they just allowed the team to shine. They allowed the team to keep pushing forwards, even from 23-5 down. We'll be all right. We'll keep going. A little mention for Jake Gordon as well, who I think, again, you give a scrum half a platform, they can shine as well. I thought he was brilliant. He was really busy. Tate McDermott had to come on the wing as well, and I thought he played really well too. Tom Liner will get better for those experiences for sure. But yeah, you're right. The quality of Gibson Park and Russell can't be underestimated. They were so, so good for the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it tells you everything really that Gibson Park was being asked to play the full 80. I think that's how important he is to Andy Farrell and how good he is. And I think Finn Russell over the last year, we've seen what he can do when you give him a proper monster forward pack and give him the platform. We've seen it at Bath with them doing a treble. We've seen it here with him leading the Lions to victory. It was always the question mark over Finn Russell. Yes, he's good, but how good is he? Because he didn't have that sort of forward pack with Scotland to be able to win things. Well, you give him that forward pack and he wins things. He is class and has been a silky operator all tour. I'm going to move on now and talk about the Wallabies. They were immense yesterday at the MCG. They took the game to the Lions, but just came up short. Their head coach, Joe Schmidt, spoke to the media following the match and said Australia's performances have been better than their results suggest.
I mean, I didn't think we were that bad last week. I know people reported as such, but it was 3 tries each, and I felt we really clawed our way back into that game. In this one, I felt we had the game to really challenge them, and we demonstrated that when we built the lead. But they're a really good side, and the experience they have just allowed them to stay calm and execute their game as well. So it was a heck of a test match, and we're absolutely gutted.
That was the Wallabies head coach Joe Schmidt, who had to do his press conference whilst the Lions were belting out songs from their dressing room. We mentioned that earlier on. Topsy, what do you make of his comments there? Is it fair that he actually thought they were better in the first test than people have given them credit for? Because I must admit, he and Harry Wilson said that after the game in the presser, and I personally didn't see their performance that way, but what do you make of it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it depends which lens you look at it. I mean, they weren't good in the first test. They really weren't. I mean, there was a clear gulf between the two teams for 50 minutes. And yes, it's always great to be able to come back into the game and, of course, say, yeah, it was 3 tries apiece. But actually, I think I put that more down to the Lions' mistakes as opposed to Australia really grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and saying, no, no, we're in this. So it's yeah, I guess you use what you need to give yourselves a bit of comfort. Because if you then contrast that to how they played yesterday, completely different team. And yes, of course, different personnel give you a different performance, but that those guys coming back in actually elevated the rest of the team. So Wilson, McWright were able to get more involved. We saw more of Ikitau, Suoliti. Tom Wright, as we mentioned earlier, was able to showcase more of his skills because they had a platform to perform. And so, that's you need to be able to develop that almost regardless of who's on the pitch. Yes, you need your key guys in there, but you can't rely on 1 or 2 key individuals to be able to play test match rugby. Otherwise, you're going to become a team that's so inconsistent that always yo-yos. One week we're great. Oh, now those guys aren't fit. They're not going to be available. We can't be as good the week after. So they were better, and hopefully they will now be better going forward. But yeah, yesterday would have been tough to take.
Yeah, how much of this game slipping away from the Wallabies do you put down to the fact of Skelton and Valentini going off? Because they were both awesome in that first half. I thought Valentini in particular, and again from my seat pitch side, some of his carries were bulldozing, unbelievable. But when those guys went off, what was it? Valentini at halftime, Skelton early on in the second half. Were those two players enough of a loss that is when you started to think Australia was struggling a lot more in the game?
They were. And actually, if you watch it back, you can clearly see the shift in kind of physical parity dominance go the Lions' way once those 2 boys left the pitch. Because, I mean, I don't have the exact, but say they carried 10 to 15 times a piece. They're taking 2 or 3 Lions defenders with them every single time and generating quick ball, which makes it easier for the next guy to generate quick ball and get over the gain line. So when you lose that and it's not replaced, you could kind of see it now. Then advantage went to the Lions. So every time the Lions carried, they got 1 or 2 meters every time. The ball was quicker. And even the final passage of play where it was 14 odd phases, aside from the very, very last clear out, Australia were never near slowing the ball down. They were never near knocking the Lions back and generating slow ball that would allow their defense to get into the game. So when you have that advantage in attack, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we'll score. And the Lions were able to do that. And that was clear. I mean, you'd want more from your 6-2 bench. And I think that is something the Wallabies will definitely need to look at in terms of this week. I think their depth. Their depth is something they're going to really need to look at, and making sure that the guys coming off the bench give them that physical edge too.
Yeah, it's funny with the Wallabies because I thought they were brilliant yesterday, and I genuinely felt really gutted for them in a sense because it was an amazing occasion and they did so well to pull themselves into the lead, but then the game just slipped away from them. And I guess if we continue to look at the positive, partly a positive, partly a negative here, Topsy, I thought they were everything they should have been in the first test, which makes me look at it and say, where was that in Brisbane? And a good example of that, I think, is the Will Skelton scuffle. I mean, he was a bit of a menace. He was in people's faces, but he had that kind of bit of a cheap shot, bit of a late hit on Tyg Furlong, which he got away with, and Harry Wilson absolutely steamed in when Maratoje started pushing him. Loved that, Topsy, because I felt the week before the Wallabies were a little bit soft. They had the hit in the air on Tom Liner from Tom Curry that no one piled into Tom Curry. And I'm not saying I want to see fistfights breaking out all the time. You don't want to do something stupid to give away a penalty, but I think it's a real reflection of intent and mentality that the Wallabies had this week. So I guess it's a two-pronged question really, is how much did you love to see that, but also how much are you looking at it and thinking, where on earth was that in Brisbane?
You're spot on with both. It was absolutely needed because, yes, obviously, in terms of defense and attack, carries, tackling, you want to physically impose yourself there, but you also want to ruffle some feathers. You want to get stuck in and say, actually, what have you got? And obviously, with a million cameras in the stadium, you can't punch, you can't do anything that's going to get you yellow carded, but you can push, you can grab, you can scruffle, you can, I mean, and even if you look at Will Skelton, for such a big, heavy man, like he had a massive smile on his face while he was doing it as well. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
I'm bigger
totally.
than all of you. It's like playground stuff. I'm bigger than all of you. I'm going to grab you by the shirt. I'm going to grab you by the collar, and then all of you are going to surround me. But it's just designed to get under the skin of the opposition and say, right, we are here. The real Australia are here. We're going to get stuck into you. We're going to go show you what you're about. We're going to rattle your cages, and we're going to put it to you in a way that we just didn't and couldn't in Test 1. So that's a bit of a shame. But in terms of the positivity, shows that that's within them. They can do that. It's now, can they do that next week in the third test?
I also get that it's so easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but in looking back on it now, do you think the Wallabies were underprepared or undercooked for the first test?
Yes, they were. Absolutely. I mean, it's clear as day that they were. They played one warm-up game since last November, which going in to play an opposition that has had the best part of 6, 7 warm-up games off the back of a long season. They're all battle-hardened. I think Australia might look back and say, yes, we were underprepared, we were undercooked. Yes, I know they wanted to protect their players, but actually, should we let more of them just get a little bit of game time, even if it's, look, you can't control what happens, but right, go and play a half. Then you come off just to get them up to speed a bit quicker. Because again, you saw that in the first 50 minutes of Test 1, the Lions were battle hardened and Australia weren't. They didn't have an answer for the intensity and the physicality that the Lions brought. And it took till that intensity died down in the second half for Australia to establish a foothold. But of course, it was too late then.
Yeah, I agree. I think you look back at that first test and it's pretty clear that Australia needed another warm-up game. And you don't get that in a Lions series. And before you know it, you're 2-0 down, the series is gone, and it's another 12 years before you get another shot at the Lions. So I do think Rugby Australia or Joe Schmidt, the organisation of their preparation for this series is something they have got badly wrong, and I think it's cost them, because we saw what Australia can do in that first half at the MCG, and I think they were always going to be underdogs for this series, and we saw that on Saturday, didn't we? They were absolutely brilliant, and they still ended up losing because they didn't quite have the strength in depth. They didn't have the experience and leadership and quality the Lions had coming off their bench. So maybe it would have always ended up this way, but I don't think they gave themselves their absolute best shot of winning this series. And I think that's going to frustrate them, no doubt.